A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin nabiyil ummi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa barik wa sallim. We have to start with verse number 55 of Surah Yusuf, which is the 12th surah or chapter of the Quran. But I'd like to go back a little in order to catch the thread of the narrative. This is in 51 and 52. Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam is still in prison, and he has already given the interpretation of the king's dream, and the king is impressed with him, and he has asked for Yusuf alayhi salam to be freed from prison. But he says, no, I do not want to go out of the prison before my case is solved, before my case is decided. And he said to the bearer of the message, go and ask the king to find out what was the case of the women who cut their hands, that is Zulaykha and her friends, female friends. And then Yusuf alayhi salam says, while still in prison, he said, I did this so that the minister would know that I did not betray his trust in his absence. God does not sanction the deceit of the betrayers. That is, he did not cheat on him regarding his wife. By minister is meant the person who had bought him in Egypt, and his title is the Aziz. And he's like a prime minister or a chief minister or something like that. See, he is the person most powerful after the king. So he says God does not sanction the deceit of the betrayers. That is, God does not like anyone to betray his trust. This is also mentioned in the Bible in the book of Genesis, verses number 39 to 40. Now we come to verse number 53 and continuing with part 13, that is the Sipara number 13 or the Juz number 13. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ Rabbi. Inna Rabbi Ghafurur Rahim. That is, I cannot acquit myself of all blame, for the soul is inclined towards evil, except for the one on whom my Lord has mercy. Indeed, my Lord is the much forgiving, the ever merciful. So he says, even though it was the fault of the women, especially of Zulaykha, the wife of the Aziz, but I cannot say that I am totally innocent, because my nafs, my soul, or my ego, or my desire was also being I was being attracted to these women. Why? Because the soul is inclined towards evil. Now here the word used for the soul which is inclined towards evil is called Ammaratum Bisu. And this, I think I had mentioned earlier, that this is the lowest stage in the development of the soul. And we had talked about the development of the soul in 3 broad stages. Some people make more stages, but I think this is very neat and easy to understand. So in the first stage, in fact, I intend to go into a little more detail about this, but here I'm just mentioning that in the first stage in the development of the soul, one has the base desires and forgetfulness of God and going against His commands. And in the second stage is the Nafs al-Lawwama, and that means that this is mentioned in Surah Al-Qiyamah, and which is the 75th Surah of the Quran, verse number 2. And in this, one can compare the nafs al-lawwama to the conscience. That means there is a voice inside one's heart and soul, and that voice is now controlling that person. You do not need outside forces to control him. And the third and the highest stage is al-nafs al-mutmainna. That is the blissful soul or the soul at peace. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Fajr, verse 27 to 30. So now we'll read a little more, and then we'll come back to a detailed description of these stages of the soul, because they are extremely interesting and also they help us in controlling our own souls. وقال الملك ائتوني به استخلص لنفسي فلما كلمه قال إنك اليوم لدينا مكين أمين. The king said, bring him to me, I will reserve him for myself. And when the king spoke to him, he said, from now on you will be with us as a most honorable and trusted person. So now the problem of the case of the women had been solved. Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam had never been accused of anything really, and without making a case against him and without allowing him to present his defense, he was put into prison for a long time, several years. So the king was of course impressed first by the interpretation of his dream, and also by the fact that he did not rush out of the prison and he wanted to come out honorably. So he was most impressed, and he put him in charge of the storehouses and the finances of the land, which is like being the finance minister at this early stage. قَالَ اجْعَلْنِي عَلَى خَزَائِنِ الْأَرْضِ إِنِّي حَفِيظٌ عَلِيمٌ. And Yusuf ﷺ said to the king, appoint me in charge of the treasures of the earth. I will preserve them with special knowledge. So we know that the treasures of the earth are all the harvests that grow in it. And especially in those days before the Industrial Revolution, the main income of a land was from this. And also it served to feed the people. And for Yusuf ﷺ, he did not care about acquiring an important post. He was mainly concerned about the suffering of the people that they would undergo in the 7 years in which there would be a famine. So his purpose was to serve the cause of God and to relieve the suffering of the people. Now here some commentators have come up with a question that can a prophet collaborate with an unbelieving, that is a kafir, and cruel king? And most of the kings in those days were of course cruel. And the answer to this that they themselves have given is that since the king gave Prophet Yusuf ﷺ complete control over the treasures and also gave him autonomy in decision making, therefore he did not have to follow the wrong ways of those people or of the king. And also because Prophet Yusuf ﷺ knew there was no one else who could perform these duties so efficiently. Therefore, he offered himself. Now here when he says, I will preserve them with special knowledge, Inni Hafizun Alim. So where does the special knowledge come from? He is a prophet and he would get his knowledge from God through wahi or inspiration. And therefore, he knew that he would be the best person to be able to manage the affairs. وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَتَبَوَّأُ مِنْهَا حَيْثُ يَشَاءُ نُصِيبُ بِرَحْمَتِنَا مَن نَّشَاءُ وَلَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. This is how we established Yusuf in the land so that he could live wherever he wished. We raise in rank through our mercy whomever we please, and we do not allow to go waste the reward of those who excel in goodness. Now, why is it said here that he could live wherever he wished? Because he was given enough freedom that he could travel all over the country and that he could live wherever he desired and for how many days or months he desires, because he was now going to rule all over it. And also it is said that when Potiphar died, Potiphar is supposed to be the name of the Aziz, the husband of Zulaikha, the man who had bought him in Egypt, and he was the person most powerful next to the king. And when he died, then the king made Hazrat Yusuf ﷺ in charge of the treasures of Egypt, and he was also conferred, he was given the title of Aziz, Al-Aziz as well, after the Aziz died. Now, وَلَا أَجْرُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. I left out a little of this last sentence in verse number 56, and we do not allow to go waste the reward of those who excel in goodness. Now, we have already learned from the Quran that God says that even if you do a good deed equal to a grain of sand, then also you will be rewarded for it. So since Yusuf ﷺ had a stainless character, and he had the strength to bear hardships. Of course, his strength came from God. And by this time, it is said that he had already been appointed a prophet. So he had the strength to bear hardships and even, false accusations. It's not easy to bear a false accusations, but he was very patient while in the prison, and when he had been accused falsely. وَلَأَجْرُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. While the reward of the hereafter is better for those who believe and are conscious of God. Hereafter, of course, is the next life, and those people who believe in God and they believe in the hereafter, then their deeds in this world are all polished up, they have better deeds than other people. And these are the people who believe that the reward of the hereafter is better, and this is what we are being told by God. And this is also of course, it's all over the Quran, but in the Surah Ad-Duha, from which we read a little prayer, that also has the same sense when it is said, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. It can be interpreted in many ways. We like to interpret it as your every tomorrow will be better than every today. But one can also say that your next life will be better than this life, or the days to come will be better than these days. So the reward of the hereafter is better for those who believe and are conscious of God. Conscious of God, yattaqoon, of course, is believing in God and being aware of Him almost all the time in every thought and deed and word, and also it has been translated as being pious, or one who loves God. A muttaqi is one who loves God so much that he doesn't do anything which would displease God. He is aware of God and he wants to please Him. Now we have done this ruku. I'd like to now go back to this development of the soul. And there is an article on this in my book, Wisdom from the Quran, and the title is The 3 Stages of the Development of the Soul. So we find that the almost inexplicable mystery of life and death. This is something mysterious, how a life comes into being, and how a person who had just been talking to us a few hours ago, or even a few minutes ago, and he had been eating and walking and talking and thinking and doing everything else that all the human beings do in this world, and suddenly something happens to him. And now what we have is not a person, but a body, a dead body. And we have no use for that dead body. And the people who had loved him so much, his loved ones in this world, they are the ones who say, hurry up, let us bury him quickly. So what is this mystery? So in the Quranic framework we understand that the soul gives life to the body, and the body dies as soon as the soul leaves it. And the fetus in the womb, in spite of being biologically alive, becomes a living thing only after the soul is blown into it. And in Surah Sajda it is said, then he improved it, God improved it, and breathed into him of his spirit. So when the spirit is blown into the human being, into the fetus, then that becomes a living creature. So the nafs, or the ruh, or the soul, the word nafs has been defined in many ways. It can also be used for a person, or the ruh, or the soul, even the ego. But here we are talking about the soul. So the nafs been defined by Imam Ghazali as a refined body, as a latif jism, the refined body, which needs nourishment, exercise and training, just like the physical body. And since the soul is made up of ethereal matter, it's not material matter or earthly matter, it wants to live in the other world and has a dislike for the material, the worldly and the base. The aspiration of the soul is to be rid of the base qualities and desires of the body and to travel higher and higher in the spiritual realm until it finally finds complete bliss in proximity with God. And the Sufis often look upon the soul as a cage in which, just as you imprison a bird in a cage, so also they look upon the body as a cage in which the soul is trapped. The body is the cage and the soul is trapped in it. They long for and strive for the time when the immortal soul will be freed from this mortal cage. That means the Sufis are longing for death all the time. And by this, the word used for them is not death. The word used for them is visal. That means a meeting. That means they're going to meet their Creator. So the whole drama of human choice and free will and accountability to God for one's deeds and the tussle that goes along with it can be seen enacted clearly in this stage. In the first stage, which is known as the nafs that we just read, nafsum ammarat. I'll read the exact correct pronunciation. Ammaratum bisu. This is the first stage. And the development from this first stage to the second is not a progressive linear movement, but is a back and forth movement like that of the chessboard, because one keeps on falling and then recovering and trying to stand up again. Since a longing for the sublime can be kindled. It appears that no outside control is now required. Since a conscience and a longing for the sublime has developed, the main goal in sight is the akhirah or the hereafter, and not this dunya or the present material world. The final result is that selfishness decreases, altruism increases, and giving and sharing become more satisfying than taking and hoarding. Let me now once again name the 3 stages of the soul. First is the nafs ammara bisu, which is the base soul, and which is selfish, and this can be seen most clearly in the behavior of the children whose main concern is for their self-interest. And the first few words that they learn to speak is I want this, and I want that. But after they have been trained by their parents, if they are trained properly, then the soul, of course, gets a little improved. And if it is left untrained, then the soul can remain selfish and evil even up to a later age. Then the second is the nafs al-lawwama, and this is the blaming soul or the self-critical soul or the conscience. Now, it is as if a conscience has developed and this person does not need an outside force. And the third stage is the nafs mutmainna, which is the highest stage of the purified, blissful soul, which is above reproach. Now, the first stage of Amara Bisu is supposed to be a base and the least developed, but it is also a necessary vehicle of body existence, that it helps one to survive by providing a certain amount of selfishness, the instincts of survival, self-defense, and developing the great potentialities placed within us. Here, the soul's main desires are to fulfill the needs of the physical body, to collect and hoard physical possessions, and the desire for self-promotion. Hoard physical possessions, we are always collecting all kinds of stuff, and then we want to make property because we want to leave it to our children. So all these desires keep pulling it down spiritually. Since the complex human mind has been given the gift of a free will and choice, therefore at this stage the person refines and as well as complicates the primary needs of the body into secondary and more complex urges of greed for worldly things. So if one is still at this stage, one can develop every one of one's desires into something much more complex. For example, the need for clothing is a basic need. We want to protect ourselves from the weather and also to cover our shame. Now, this need for clothing and protection is taken towards very complex and complicated directions, which could result in being obsessed with extremely expensive designer clothes and designer items. And there is a basic need for food. Just if we have enough food, no matter how inexpensive, we can still survive. But as one, develops in this way, the basic need for food ends up in developing a penchant for gourmet cuisine. The need for rest and privacy can lead to acquiring, like one needs a house to rest and for privacy. And this can lead to acquiring the most elaborate housing, bedding, furniture and furnishings, etc. In this process, the monsters of competitiveness, desire for superiority, like you say you have this, it's described as the competing with the Joneses, with your neighbors or whomever we know. If they have something better than us, then we also want that same thing. So in this process, the monsters of competitiveness, desire for superiority, lust for all kinds of luxurious comforts and entertainment and worldly possessions, and the desire to acquire fame is born. To achieve these ends, a person can become unnecessarily dishonest, destructive, deceitful, aggressive, and cruel. But greed breeds greed, and the more one gets, the more one wants, until one gets caught in a whirlpool of insatiable desires related to this dunya, accompanied by an absence of peace in life. So the worldly goods may make us happy for a little while, but they do not provide us with any peace. Now, one of the positive aspects of this stage is that since parents think of their children as being an extension of their beings, they are helped at this stage by this selfish instinct in accomplishing the difficult task of bringing up children, protecting them, and providing for them with great love and care. But the upbringing of the children also depends on the stage the nafs of the parents has reached. The higher the stage of the nafs, the better and more spiritual will be the training that the children will receive. Now, there's a Sufi saint, one can call him, Shahidullah Faridi. He was a Britisher, and he came over to India in his time and he accepted Islam and he learned Sufism and he practiced it. So according to Shahidullah Faridi, the nafs ammara bisu has a forceful energy, and it has also been compared to the untrained wild horse. At one time there used to be wild horses in the jungle and people would go and catch them and try to train them. Otherwise, they would, you could not use them for any purpose. So this nafs ammara has been compared to a wild horse which is untrained whose good qualities cannot be utilized. So if the rider has not learned to tame and master it, the wild horse will run away with him and throw him off and destroy him. So when proper training is provided by the parents and teachers in the early stages of life, and later when the person himself strives in trying to acquire the values of honesty, mercy, and following a balanced middle course, the nafs is ready to reach the second stage known as the nafs lawwama, or the blaming soul that we have. This will come in Surah Al-Qiyamah. The nafs lawwama has a conscience. The person in this stage has developed a conscience and starts feeling remorse at any wrong committed and seeks forgiveness for any negative thought that's raised into his mind. So we often, feel that many people today do not like to say sorry. So I think that is because they have not been trained to do it. And also maybe they are still they are still at the stage of the nafs ammara. So they do not feel guilty and they don't want to say sorry. So the whole drama of human choice and free will and accountability to God for one's deeds and the tussle that goes along with it can be seen and acted clearly in this second stage. It appears that no outside control is now required since a conscience and a longing for the sublime has been developed, and the main goal is the hereafter and not this material world. So in the final analysis, we find that in this state, the selfishness decreases, altruism increases. Altruism is when one is thinking more about other people and less about oneself. And giving, whatever you have, your property or wealth, and sharing become more satisfying than taking and hoarding it. So in this second stage, all natural urges can be satisfied, but in the balanced manner that is prescribed by God. The inner desire for superiority is transmuted into an effort to excel morally and spiritually. Now, if you want to do to be, superior, then in this state, that person will try to be superior morally and spiritually. The desire for aggrandizement, that means to be grand and showing off, is transformed into the desire for being able to help others in a big way. The pleasure inherent in making sacrifices is also experienced. A high office is taken as an opportunity to benefit mankind. Now, this is what we just came across in the case of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, that he was being given this high office. He had no desire for this high chair that he was going to get, but for him it was an opportunity to benefit mankind. And gradually desires are harnessed, and the wild beast of the nafs ammara, instead of being a violent and harmful creature, is now a tame and helpful companion. So the soul is a helpful companion, and the soul goes along with you, with the person wherever he goes, and he keeps advising him and controlling him. Now, this is also about somebody who said, I was traveling somewhere and there was a strike, and this was the first time I had come to that country, and this person was quite young at the time. So for a short time, for a few minutes, this person said, so now what am I going to do? I'm all alone by myself in this strange country. And then the thought came to him, no, I have myself. I'm not alone, I have myself with me. That means like you have your soul and you have this good companion which is giving you all the good advice. So it becomes a helpful companion. And now this soul is ready to move on to a new territory, that is the highest spiritual stage known as the nafs mutmainna. Now the nafs mutmainna, and from this Arabic word, one can tell the meaning that it is a satisfied or a blissful stage of the soul. And this is reached through a lifetime of constant training, abstinence, that is, avoiding all the wrong things and sometimes avoiding all the pleasurable things, and by prayer, fasting, and zikr, a great deal of zikr or remembrance of God. And if you read verse number 28 from Surah Ar-Ra'd, Surah Ar-Ra'd is the 13th surah of the Quran, the next one that we'll be studying. Those who believe and whose hearts find peace in the remembrance of God should remember that only in the remembrance of God is there peace for the hearts. This verse has also been recommended for people who have either high blood pressure or a heart problem. So material desires know bounds and bring no peace. The only way to peace is the contemplation of God, the remembrance of God. This is the highest spiritual state one could ever aspire to achieve. Now, the remembrance of God is not just taking a subbah or a tasbih and sitting down and reciting words. Of course, that is a very important part of it. But the remembrance of God also is to be aware of God, and no matter what we do, if we are going to eat something, we should know that it is halal. If you're going to do any other act, we should know that this has been sanctioned by God. So all the time, 24 hours, of the day, one is aware of God, of one's creator, and of trying to please him and not to annoy him. So now the person here in the second state gives up the base pleasures of the world, continually tries to rise higher and higher, and follows the prescribed rules of behavior as well as worship. Even in worship, how all of us do this. We say, this is how I do my nafil. Is that the right way to do it? What is the right way of doing sajda sahw? Is that the right way to do it? So we are constantly trying to improve ourselves. And also he expels by moving on from obligatory worship to offering voluntary devotions. Now the one way of getting closer to God is to practice voluntary devotion, that is nafli ibadah, and vigils and sacrifices. Vigil would be maybe staying up at night to do remembrance, and especially the tahajjud prayer. This is supposed to be a salatul ishq, that is the prayer of love for God, because there is no one watching you and that person is just doing it for the love of God. And also by offering sacrifices. Sacrifice does not only mean sacrificing an animal, but supposing a person comes to us who is needy, and we have kept something for our own use, and we treasure that thing, and then we find that somebody needy comes to us and we take that thing out and give it to him. Now that is also a sacrifice. So this is how the soul reaches the stage where no pain or hurt seems to matter, and all the charms of the world fade away. And the nafs in this stage guides and helps God's creation with mercy. That means the satisfied soul feels compassion even for those on the evil path and prays for their transformation and salvation. So he does not condemn those people who are on an evil path or who are unbelievers, but he even prays for them and tries to help them out of that situation. So the only goal in sight is to move closer and closer to God, to obey and love him, and to be loved by him. So in this state, the nafs loves God and all his attributes. His attributes we find in the names of God. And we have been told that there are 99 names of God in the Quran, even in the Quran there are more than 99 names. For example, Fatir, Al-Fatir is a name of God, and it has not been put in the list of 99. And besides that, there are also other compound names like Sattarul Uyub, that means the one who covers the weaknesses of people. So and if you remember, we had done a whole program on the names of God, and in that we had read some of the dua, popularly known as the dua, Hazrat Ali's dua, but it was actually revealed through Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and in that we find there are 1,000 names of God, and it's a beautiful dua even just to listen to. So this person who has reached the highest stage of the nafs mutmainna, he loves God and all his attributes, and therefore God guides it towards light, purity, refinement, beauty and harmony. So the nafs is also concerned about God's creation and deals with them with sympathy and kindness. That is, he becomes kind to all the creatures of God, since God himself has said, "My mercy precedes my wrath." This is a hadith Qudsi to be found in the collections of Bukhari and Muslim. So when one tries to act on this mercy preceding one's wrath, then one becomes more merciful to every creature that one comes across, not just human beings but also animals. So the qualities of selflessness, sincerity and generosity, which are really an outpouring of love, are highlighted. The perception of the nafs at this stage is synthetical, that is, as opposed to being analytical. That is, the nafs can perceive things and form an opinion about their totality and not just, the parts of it. Once a friend of mine, brought a book written by some new Muslim, and he had said that there is no mention of love in the Quran, and it is just the word Wadud has been mentioned only twice. So I said, what about mercy? Mercy is there all over the Quran. In fact, you cannot start a surah except for one without saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That is, start with the name of God, who is the most merciful and the ever merciful. So if there is no love, then there can be no mercy. And where there is mercy, there is love. So this soul has reached these higher states, and the love of the blissful soul for God in this stage is made up of three parts. The first is a sense of utter dependence on God, resulting in humility, submission, singing of His praises, worshipping Him, and asking Him alone for His bounty. So a sense of utter dependence on God means that, all right, there are people in this world that we have to ask for things. If a person is looking for a job, he has to go to the executive or the boss in that firm and ask him for the job. But he also believes that only if God is willing, then he will get this job. So the idea is to do your bit and then to leave it to God. This reminds me of a hadith in which a person who was a traveler in those days but couldn't tell at once that this man has traveled a long way, because they were exposed to the weather and the dust and everything. So this traveler came to the Prophet and he started asking him something, and the Prophet said, how did you come? And this man said, I've come on a camel. And so the Prophet said, what did you do with the camel? So because the Prophet had some inspiration that he had left his camel untied. So he said, what did you do with the camel? He said, I left it in the care of God. So the Prophet said, no, first tie it. First tie the camel and then give it in the care of God. That means the human beings have a certain amount of responsibility. Sometimes people question this. If everything is going to be decided by God, then why do we need to do anything? You have to do your bit and then leave it all to God. So one has to one develops a sense of its utter dependence on God, resulting in, when you know that you are, totally dependent on God, then you develop a kind of humility and submission, and also you sing His praises and you worship Him and asking Him alone for His bounty. And this is what Hazrat Yusuf a.s. is doing at the moment, that he says that it's the nafs, which my nafs could have led me a wrong way, but God helped me out of it. So the second stage in this third stage, the second point is the desire to please God, to devote oneself for His purposes, and to sacrifice all for Him in performing His will. That is, not saying, no, I can't do this, but if you are sure that this is what God would like you to do, then you go ahead and do it. And to become the mirror of His light, and to give up the soul at this stage will give up its own imperfection by becoming the reflection of God's perfection. That means gradually the soul is rising to the stage and getting closer and closer to God, not just in the love that this person has for God and the love that God has for him, but also in acquiring some of those attributes which actually belong to God. In fact, Imam Ghazali has a whole book on this subject of the attributes of God. And in that he says every person can try and take a little bit of his share from God's attributes. And how does one take one's share? That is by practicing that attribute. For example, if you want some share from the attribute Ar-Rahman, then you start becoming merciful to His creatures. And when you start practicing this attribute, then God becomes merciful to you, as well as you start developing that attribute. So now the greatest reward for the good soul, which has reached the stage of the nafs mutmainna, the moment it has been waiting and working for, and the final and complete harmony and proximity with its Creator will be when it will be welcomed by God Himself into His presence and to paradise on the day of judgment with the words, O blissful soul, return to your Lord, such that you are pleased with Him and He with you. Enter with my devotees, enter my paradise. So this is one of the things that the spiritually elevated people are aspiring for, that God will welcome them Himself to paradise. What the quotation I just read from the Quran is from Surah Al-Fajr, which is the 89th Surah of the Quran, in verses 27 to 30. So this is a brief discussion of the three stages of the development of the soul. Since Hazrat Yusuf a.s. had mentioned the soul and the first stage of Inna nafsa la'ammaratum bis-su'i, which is inclined towards evil. Therefore, I thought it would be a good time to discuss these stages. Now, we had read up to verse number 57 a little while ago. We can now start with verse number 58. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَجَاءَ إِخْوَةُ يُوسُفَ فَادْخُلُوا عَلَيْهِ فَعَرَفُهُمْ وَهُمْ لَهُ مُنْكِرُونَ. That means, then came now the stage is now set. The Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam has been made in charge of all the storehouses of Egypt. And the 7 years of plenty have gone, in which Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam has stored a great deal of the grain, as he had suggested, in the ears of the corn, that is, with their natural covering, so that they wouldn't get destroyed. And now, not only the people of Egypt, now the 7 years of drought have started, the famine. And the fame has spread, Egypt's fame has spread, that this country has some grain stored, and they have now started selling it. So then came the stepbrothers of Yusuf and entered his presence. He recognized them, but they did not recognize him. Why? How is that? This is because he was only a child when they had thrown him into a well. And according to some commentators, the brothers came and claimed him, that this is our runaway slave, so please pay us something for him. They wanted to make sure, exactly where he was. So anyway, some commentators think that this didn't happen, so that doesn't really matter. And the point is, when the brothers left him, he was just a child, but they were all grown-up men. And so he remembered their faces. Besides, the brothers thought that Yusuf must be a slave working for somebody in Egypt. And they had no idea of the position that he had reached. So, of course, now he was a grand ruler of a great country, and he had those great, rich clothes on, which were befitting his position. So how could they recognize him? So the famine had now spread even to Canaan, where Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, or the family of Yusuf alayhi salam, lived. And we were on verse number 59. وَلَمَّا جَهَّزَهُمْ بِجَهَازِهِمْ قَالَ ائْتُونِي بِأَخٍ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَبِيكُمْ أَلَا تَرَوْنَ أَنِّي أُوفِي الْكَيْلَ وَأَنَا خَيْرُ الْمُنْزِلِينَ. So when he had supplied them with their share of provisions, that is, when Yusuf alayhi salam was presiding over this transaction and all the transactions, and he supplied them with their share of provisions. According to some people, according to Muhammad Asad, every foreigner coming to the country to buy provisions was given a ration of 1 camel load. So, and when they came, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam started talking to his brothers and asking them, where they were from and how many people were there in their family. So they also happened to mention their last brother, Benjamin, who was their half-brother from the mother's side. And Yusuf alayhi salam and Hazrat Benjamin were 2 real brothers. So when they mentioned him, of course, he wanted to know about the welfare of Benjamin. And he said, when you come next time, bring your half-brother with you, the one with the common father. Do you not see how I fill the measure and what a good host I am? So he said, if you bring your brother along, you will get an extra camel load, which would be their share, in the rations. So they would get 11 camel loads. At the moment, they were getting 10 camel loads. And actually, they had some people say that, some commentators say that they asked for another camel load, saying that we have another brother at home. So Hazrat Yusuf said, why don't you bring him along? If you do, then we will give him an extra camel load. Now, here it also makes it obvious that not only were they providing food to the whole of Egypt and surrounding countries and cities, but they had also made boarding and lodging arrangements for those people who came for the grain. Because he said, do you not see how I fill the measure? That means I give a good measure. And also what a good host I am. If the government of Egypt was acting as a host, that means they were providing them with lodging as well as food. Because in those days, there was no hotels and things like that, and you couldn't carry your food with you all the time. So they were provided with boarding and lodging. فَإِن لَمْ تَأْتُونِي بِهِ فَلَا كَيْلَ لَكُمْ عِنْدِي وَلَا تَقْرَبُونَ. But if you do not bring him to me, then I will have no measure for you and you will not be able to approach me. Now, some commentators think that you will be denied food totally, you will not get any measure of food, but some think that you will not get that extra that your brother would deserve. And also, you will not be able to approach me. This is interpreted as meaning that you will not be allowed to enter this city. We're on verse number 61. قَالُوا سَنُرَاوِدُ عَنْهُ أَبَاهُ وَإِنَّا لَفَاعِلُونَ. We will certainly ask his father, they said, this much we can do. They are not sure. The stepbrothers are not sure that their father, Yaqub alayhi salam, will let the youngest son, Benjamin, accompany them. Why? Because he knew what they had done with Yusuf alayhi salam. And of course, they said the wolf has devoured him, but actually, Yaqub alayhi salam had some idea that they were telling lies because his garment that they took back with him with false blood on it was not torn at all. And besides, he had a premonition. He was a prophet. وَقَالَ لفتيانه اجعلوا بضاعتهم في رحالهم لعلهم يعرفونها إذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم لعلهم يرجعون. Then he, that is Yusuf alayhi salam, said to his servants, place the goods which they gave for the barter back into their bags. Now, in those days, I don't know if they had any coins or not, but a lot of commercial transactions were done through barter. So, and also there is, this tradition of selling your silver in your precious silver, family silver, when you were in trouble. And this was like a security if you had some precious things which could be sold off any time. In fact, a lot of women from the last generation used to collect a lot of gold jewelry. And of course, one purpose was a kind of, sort of vanity. They wanted to wear that jewelry. But the second reason was that they thought that this could come in handy whenever there was some problem. And there are so many examples of some famous men who were able to set up their business or to, sort of recover their losses because their women came out with all the jewelry that they had. So in a similar way, these people are bringing the goods through which they are buying the grain. So here Yusuf alayhi salam says, place the goods back into their bags. They will recognize them when they go back to their families and will be encouraged to return. And naturally, they will be happy that they didn't have to pay anything for their grain, which was, quite a large amount, 10 camel packs. So Yusuf alayhi salam saying that they will be encouraged to return. He wants them to return so that he keeps getting news of his family, and also he wants to see his younger brother. فَلَمَّا رَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَبِيهِمْ قَالُوا يَا أَبَانَا مُنِعَ مِنَّا الْكَيْلُ فَأَرْسِلْ مَعَنَا أَخَانَا نَقْتَلْ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. So when they returned to their father, when the brothers returned, they said, the grain has been refused to us in future. Send with us our brother so that we might bring full measure. We will take good care of him. They are now pleading to him that please let your Benjamin go with us, and we'll promise that we'll take good care of him. And also we will be able to bring some more grain, extra grain. قَالَ هَلْ آمَنُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا كَمَا أَمِنْتُكُمْ عَلَىٰ أَخِيهِ مِنْ قَبْلِ فَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ حَافِظًا وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. So the father said, should I trust you as I had trusted you in the matter of his brother? That is Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. But God is the best of protectors and He is the most merciful of the merciful. These words of Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam is a dua which is recited to this day when they are looking for a person who is lost and they have no way of knowing where that person is. So they recite it from here, فَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ حَافِظًا وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Recite it in abundance, collectively as well as individually. He says, God is the best of protectors, فَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ حَافِظًا, and He is the most merciful of the merciful. So He is kind and He is sure to have mercy upon us, and He's sure to bring upon, let us see better days than what we are going through now. وَلَمَّا فَتَحُوا مَتَاعَهُمْ وَجَدُوا بِضَاعَتَهُمْ رُدَّتْ إِلَيْهِمْ قَالُوا يَا أَبَانَا مَا نَبْغِي هَٰذِهِ بِضَاعَتُنَا رُدَّتْ إِلَيْنَا وَنَمِيرُ أَهْلَنَا وَنَحْفَظُ أَخَانَا وَنَزْدَادُ كَيْلَ بَعِيرٍ ذَلِكَ كَيْلٌ يَسِيرٌ. So when they had reached home, these brothers opened their bags and they found that their goods had been returned to them, the precious things that they had given for the barter. They exclaimed, "O our father, what more could we want? Our goods have been returned to us. When we fetch grain for our family, that is next time, by taking our brother and protecting him, we will get an extra camel load. This amount of grain is insufficient." All right, so do we have more time? I think we can carry on for another 5 minutes. This is quite self-explanatory that they want to bring more grain by taking their brother along with them. قال لن أرسله معكم حتى تؤتوني موثقا من الله لتأتونني به إلا أن يحاط بكم فَلَمَّا أَتَوْهُ مَوْثِقَتُهُمْ قَالَ اللَّهُ عَلَى مَا نَقُولُ وَكِيلٌ. So he said, I will not send him with you unless you swear an oath confirmed in the name of God. Yeah, that is, you swear by God that you will bring him back to me unless if you are rendered completely helpless. When they gave their solemn oath in the name of God, he said, God is witness to what we say. So he agreed only on one condition, that they would swear an oath in the name of God. Now, according to a commentator, Al-Mazari, that the oath that they swore was in the name of Allah, who is the Lord of Muhammad Mustafa. We will protect him. And this Yaqub alayhi salam would oblige to send Benjamin. Now, this on the face of it is a little difficult to believe because Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came several thousand years after this incident. And how did they think of taking this oath in the name of Muhammad Mustafa? But since they were a family of prophets, it is possible that they already knew that this would be, they all knew about the last prophet, but it's possible that this family knew about the name of the last prophet. In fact, in the beginning of this very surah, it is the Quran, or let's say God, is addressing Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and saying, this is verse number 3 of Surah Yusuf. We relate to you the best of stories through revelation in the Quran, even though before this you were unaware of it. That is, even Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not know this story in detail. So now it is being revealed to him. I think we can stop here. We just read verse number 66. And here, even though they have sworn an oath, he says, the father says to his sons, I will not hold you accountable in case you are rendered completely helpless, in case you are surrounded. In those days, travel was extremely high risk, and one could be attacked by all kinds of people, or, they could enslave them or do whatever evil they wanted to. So when they gave their solemn oath in the name of God, he said, God is witness or is a guardian to what we say. So this is where we stop now, verse number 66, and inshallah we'll carry on next week from verse number 67. Now let us do our little prayer. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar wa adkhilna al jannata ma'al abrar ya azizu ya ghaffar ya rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ameen summa ameen. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Walal akhiratu khairul laka min al ula. This prayer is for all who are listening to this, that may your every tomorrow be better than every today. Ameen summa ameen. All right, thank you everyone. Inshallah, see you next week. And thank you for your time. Same to you, Jazakallah.